On last week, we talked about being confident in prayer. Our scripture for our meditational thought last week was 1 John chapter 3 and verse 22. On tonight, I want us to elaborate on the confidence that we can have in prayer, but I want to share some thoughts, some insights as to how to look at prayer and how to better understand how we can be confident in our prayer life. I'd like to just remind us of two things from last week's lesson that may be important in us understanding the confidence in prayer. Number one, I want us to be reminded that we cannot restrict the free will of others. Simply put, we can be frustrated in prayer because other people are not doing what we want them to do. And as much as we love people, and as much as we may have insights as to what they should or should not do, we have to remember that people have free will. And so we will not experience frustration if we respect the free will of people. Second thought to remind us from last week is to make sure that in our prayer requests that our prayers match God's will. I know that we have insights on what we want, what we think we want, but always remember it's not about our will, but God's will. Speaking of that phrase, I want you to look at a very familiar verse tonight, Luke chapter 22 and verse number 42, because there I want you to see something in terms of the structure of the verse that will help us as we talk about being confident in our prayer. I want us to look at Luke 22, verse 42, in three different segments. Let me read the verse to you first. It says, Father, if thou be willing, remove this cup from me. Nevertheless, not my will, but thine be done. We are certainly familiar with that verse, have read it, have heard it a million times. Let me ask of you to look at that verse in three different segments. First is an acknowledgement. Second is the ask. And three is acceptance. The first part, the acknowledgement, he says, Father. This is to acknowledge in our prayers who we are directing our prayers to. When we acknowledge God, we are showing reverence for his being. When we acknowledge him, we are showing reverence for his name. In acknowledging him, we are also being reminded of his presence. And certainly when we go through frustrating experiences, we need to be reminded that we are not alone. We also are being reminded of his power. The very reason we go to him in prayer is because of the weaknesses of our human limitations. And so we need the power of God to go beyond what we can ordinarily do or accomplish. Also acknowledging him as Father, or some other biblically appropriate term, Lord, Master, and so on, is a reminder of us to be humble. We should never approach God in prayer arrogantly. Certainly we can be confident in our prayers, but we must never make demands on God as if he is obligated to do what we ask, or that we've lost respect for who we're talking to. The second part of that verse is not only the idea of acknowledging God, but asking God. Notice Jesus says, if you are willing, please take this cup from me. I want to encourage you in your prayer lives to express with respect your honest needs, your honest wants, and your honest feelings. Keep in mind that you cannot fool God. You cannot manipulate him. And even with our vocabulary, you cannot impress him. So be honest with God with respect. Think through your prayer requests and ask yourself, is what I'm asking, what I'm requesting, Does it honor God? If you are willing, is a reminder to ourselves that this is not about our right to demand of God. This is about our willingness to receive from God whatever he sees fit. The third part of the verse is acceptance. It is the idea of, nevertheless, not my will, but thine will be done. This is a surrender or a submission to God. The word submit in the Bible means to fall under the authority of another. When we submit to God, we are saying to God that we are under his authority, that whatsoever he sees fit, that we're willing to accept that. So the next time that you pray and want to have confidence in your prayer, always know to acknowledge God reverently, ask God honestly, and accept from God willingly. This has been another installment of A Few Minutes with the Minister.